Chainsaw Man's big appeal is actually its worst flaw. Some people might say that they don't like the pacing or the art style, but for the most part people love this story. It's got hype, violence, sex, food, and it's hilarious. It's got everything you could possibly want in a story and everything you need for a mainstream success. But that's actually the biggest problem with Chainsaw Man. How it is marketed and how it comes off early on is vastly different from what you take away at the end of the story. It actually tricks you into getting into the story for pure hype. Now, let me be clear. When I say trick, it's not like Chainsaw Man is outright lying. Like I said, it's got a ton of mainstream appeal. It's basically right in the name. A story where the character is constantly ripping people to shreds with chainsaws. If you don't think that's hype, then I don't know what is. In this area, Chainsaw Man pretty much gives you exactly what you're expecting. There's no hidden layers or deeper meaning. I mean, if you think so, then that's good for you. But let's be honest, it doesn't get more meat-headed than having a nutshot contest with your best friend, or riding a shark in the middle of a hurricane. But that doesn't mean there isn't deeper meaning in everything else. For the most part, the initial impressions in Chainsaw Man are only the tip of the iceberg. They are there to hook people in with mainstream appeal, and then you realize that there's a lot more to it. For example, Aki comes off as this edgy badass who is clearly meant to appeal to the Sasuke fans. But you realize early on that there's a lot more to his character. Sure, people love his fights and his abilities, but the real reason people love him is because of his tragic story. Then when you look at Power, you have the same thing. She isn't nearly as fleshed out or tragic as Aki, but there's a lot to her character beyond her mainstream appeal. She hooks you in because she's cute and makes fart jokes, but she also goes through this character arc where she learns to be vulnerable and not be so self-centered. And then of course there's Denji, but we'll get to him later in the video. Right now, you're probably thinking, wow, this is pretty stupid. They have this perfectly good story with great characters, but they market it like it's some meathead hype train. Or maybe you're like me and you went through Chainsaw Man and realized, wow, this totally isn't what I thought I was getting into. In either case, you've been tricked. It's like the anime and manga equivalent of being clickbaited. Now, I'm gonna sound just a little biased here, but what if I told you that's actually a good thing? That because Chainsaw Man tricks you into thinking it's some meathead hype train, when you realize it's not, that feeling of being tricked actually encourages you to go back and see what you missed. For example, let's go back to Aki. Like I said, Aki comes off as this edgy badass, but then you realize there's more to his character. But until you start to see where Fujimoto is taking his character, it's really easy to miss some of the early foreshadowing and how he ties into the central themes. For me, the biggest part of this was how he ties into the town mouse country mouse story. Without giving too much away, this story is an important metaphor for the broader narrative in Chainsaw Man. It reflects the struggle for meaning the characters go through, but you wouldn't really know because it's dropped early in the story when we first get Aki's backstory. Then it's brought up later again. But because of how early it's dropped the first time, it's easy to miss how relevant it was then and what the connection is. It makes you wonder, of all the places in the story, why was it deliberately placed in Aki's flashback? As a result, you're motivated to go back, read it over, and see how everything connects. And whenever you reread Chainsaw Man, you're actually rewarded for going back and reading everything over. In my case, I thought Chainsaw Man was really hype on my first read-through, but I didn't really get what the point was. Then when I reread everything with the full context, I immediately started to see the story Fujimoto was trying to tell. So when you're reading Chainsaw Man, you're in this constant circle of seeing things one way, questioning that perspective, and then coming to a deeper understanding. And in this sense, Fujimoto actually places readers in the shoes of Denji. But before I explain what I mean by that, make sure to like the video if you're enjoying it so far. It's the easiest way to support the channel, and it helps spread the video to other viewers like you. Now, Denji comes off as this simple character, which again, he definitely is. He's introduced as this dumb character who wants to chase girls and kick guys in the nuts. He seems like he's just another meathead shonen protagonist that beats people up, which is true. But by the time you finish Chainsaw Man, you realize Denji's quest for girls is a quest for meaning. In fact, the whole story is a dialogue about what it means to find meaning. Denji starts off dreaming of a normal life, but time and time again he is forced to question what that really means. Is a normal life having a job and a house? Is it having some big dream that makes you stand out? Is it living according to everyone else's expectations? Each time Denji thinks he's got it figured out, he's forced to reevaluate his perspective. Similarly, everyone who gets into Chainsaw Man is gaslit into thinking Denji is a simple character, but then they're shown that there's more to him. As a result, they're motivated to reread the story with fresh perspectives and reach different conclusions. So in this sense, it really is a good thing that Chainsaw Man clickbaits you. because it accomplishes the one thing that separates good art from great art. It makes you want to wrestle with it rather than just look at it the one time. But that's if you even bother to read it the first time. See, I've been going on about how great it is that Chainsaw Man Gaslights You, but like I said, this is actually Chainsaw Man's biggest problem. People who don't like the pacing still love the story, and even some people who don't like the art style will power through because they like the story that much. But those are the people who are actually motivated to give it a chance. While the initial impressions I've been talking about hook a lot of people in with the hype, they also turn a lot of people away. While it comes off as a non-stop hype train to most people, it can also come off as another brainless mainstream battle shonen. And I'm being serious. I'm not talking about the Twitter bots that want to add 3 people to their like 57 followers by sounding different. I'm talking about perfectly reasonable people who are turned off by the way Chainsaw Man presents itself. I was looking on Reddit just to get a sense of what other people think, and I came across this person who said that they loved Fire Punch, which is written by the same author and came beforehand, but they dropped Chainsaw Man after the first chapter because it seemed generic. And there are plenty of other people who don't even think early Chainsaw Man is that bad, but because it's so hyped up, they go into it with that frame of mind and end up being disappointed. And that's the thing about hype. Because whether you like it or not, hype is a necessary evil. You have to get people excited about your story, but too much of it and it starts to turn people away. For example, I love the AOT manga, but I just got so sick of hearing about the anime on Twitter that I'm still only like 6 episodes into the final season, if you can even call it that. And that is the gambit Chainsaw Man plays by gaslighting people. While the first impression gets a lot of people excited and later motivates them to reread the story, it also has a strong chance of turning people away. It's a shame because they end up like that Fire Punch fan. They'd probably really enjoy Chainsaw Man, but because of those first impressions, they're never able to get to that point. And I suppose you could call that a weakness considering Chainsaw Man, in a way, is underselling its true value. But here's how Fujimoto overcomes that weakness and accomplishes what only a few manga can do. Let's go back to the clickbait example. Clickbait obviously has a bad connotation, but content creators generally agree that there's bad clickbait and good clickbait. Bad clickbait is when the title and thumbnail are completely different from what the video is actually about. But when those two sides tell two halves of the same story, then that's good clickbait, because viewers are sold on one portion but they take away more than that by watching the video. In this sense, Chainsaw Man is clearly an example of good clickbait. Chainsaw Man presents itself as a story for meatheads where you can just shut your brain off and watch cool things fight each other. And this is true from chapter 1 up until the newest chapters in part 2. But it is also true that Chainsaw Man has layers and there's a lot of hidden meaning, especially in the anime where MAPPA is adding even more material like they're doing with the OPs and EDs. So you can appreciate Chainsaw Man for what it offers on the surface and for its deeper meaning. It caters to both types of fans with the same story. This is something that very few manga can pull off when they're going for that mainstream appeal. Dragon Ball, which is just about as mainstream as you can get, does this to some extent, but not nearly as well as Chainsaw Man. Toriyama does a great job with a lot of the characters, and there are plenty of videos on YouTube that show you just how impactful they are. But the reality is that only the big Dragon Ball fans will appreciate the characters beyond their surface. Most people enjoy the characters, but probably wouldn't say they're really that deep, especially as the story progresses and it focuses more and more on the action and the big plot developments. This is also something that One Piece struggles with. Everyone will tell you that they fell in love with One Piece's characters. They all have these amazing backstories, especially when you look at the Straw Hats. But that was when One Piece was just another one of the big 3. Now, only the hardcore fans care about the characters. The big thing right now is theories and power scaling. You can see it in the way One Piece YouTube has changed. Early One Piece YouTube did have stuff like chapter reviews and reactions, but the best videos were the character analysis videos and the ones that explored the themes of One Piece. Now the videos are all like, the best One Piece theory, or you'll never believe what Oda just did, or why Luffy is universe level. And you can see a similar trend in the story. We don't get nearly as much time for the Straw Hats, and the story focuses more and more on the devil fruits and the hockey and all the crazy plot points. Meanwhile, Chainsaw Man has almost the exact opposite arc. People get hooked in by the action, but they stay for the characters. The big things for anime fans right now are the action and the memes, but I can guarantee there will be more and more people going on about how Chainsaw Man has the best characters. Chainsaw Man is only getting more mainstream, and yet even among manga fans, people care more about the characters and how they're evolving. And that is why the fact that Chainsaw Man Gaslights You is so genius. It completely undersells its true value, and even turns people away. But the payoff is massive. It encourages you to binge the story over and over, and succeeds where even the most successful manga falls short. And that is why Chainsaw Man's biggest problem is also its biggest strength. Now, I could go on about how genius this is, but at this point I'd like to hear what you think. What was your first impression of Chainsaw Man? How would you say it changes over time? Share your thoughts and see what everyone else has to say down in the comments. I'll pick my favorite and share it as comment of the week on my community tab. And if you'd like to hear more of my thoughts on Chainsaw Man's broader narrative, then make sure to check out my previous video where I analyzed the main trio and explain what the point of Chainsaw Man really is. You can find that video in the playlist linked right here. Until then, thank you for watching, and I hope to hear from you soon.